The news of the passing of the Kessler twins, icons of European showbiz in the 1950s and 1960s, and a gentle but unmistakable wave of nostalgia and sadness across Germany, Italy, and far beyond. German press agency dpa reported that the two sisters died on Monday at the age of 89, leaving behind a legacy that stretched across continents, decades, and artistic forms. For many people across Europe, and especially for Italians who grew up with their faces, voices, and dancing silhouettes illuminating their black and white television screens, the Kessler twins were more than entertainers. They were symbols of a particular era of glamour that was naive yet ambitious, sophisticated yet warmly accessible, and full of optimism about the future. Even decades after their peak, the mere mention of their names could evoke the jingles of old television ads, the elegant choreographies of Studio Uno, and the unmistakable rhythm of their signature Dodonpa. A tune so iconic that Italians of all ages can still hum it without thinking. Alice and Ellen Kessler, die Kesslers willing in German, Le Gemelle Kessler in Italian, were German identical twins who became singers, dancers, actresses, and ultimately cultural phenomena. Their success began in Europe and spread across the Atlantic to the United States, creating careers that spanned more than half a century. The two sisters were, in a sense, their own artistic universe. Always together, they moved through life like reflections in motion to Bottas. Two voices, two careers, yet always united, coordinated, and inseparable. They trained together, performed together, traveled together, and even lived next to each other in their final years. Their death, occurring on the same day and in the same home, feels almost like the closing of a perfectly choreographed final act. As if their lives were a performance they had rehearsed all along. Two women born together, rising together, and departing from this world together. Their story began far from the glittering lights of European show business. Alice and Ellen were born on August 20, 1936, in the small town of Nurcha in Saxony, Germany. They entered the world during one of the most tumultuous eras in European history, and their earliest memories would be shaped not by applause or music, but by the uncertainty and pain of a continent at war. As children, they survived the heavy shadows of World War II, and like many families in East Germany after the war, the Kesslers faced a different kind of struggle as the country divided into East and West. Their family eventually fled to West Germany, seeking safety and opportunities that were impossible in the Soviet-controlled East. They were teenagers when they arrived in Dusseldorf, young, determined, and unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Even before they understood the scale of their talent, they were already dancing. Their early training in ballet became the foundation for everything they later accomplished. Ballet, with its discipline, precision, and demands for near-perfect synchronicity, became their shared language. Being twins gave them a natural mirror effect, one that choreographers loved. When audiences watched them dance together, it was as if two versions of the same luminous performer had materialized on stage, moving in flawless harmony. This unique natural advantage helped them rise quickly in the world of dance. At the age of 19, they joined the legendary Bluebell Girls, one of the most famous dance troupes in the world, based at the Lido in Paris. For two young German women who had grown up in a post-war landscape, Paris felt like a rebirth, a city where art reigned, where the stage was sacred, and where the two of them finally had room to grow into the performers they were destined to become. It was during these years in Paris that the world first began to take notice. Their long legs, astonishingly long, nearly unbelievable in proportion, became one of their trademarks. They were the kind of legs people wrote articles about, the kind photographers begged to capture, the kind audiences gasped at when the sisters emerged in glittering costumes under the stage lights of the Lido. Even in an era filled with showgirls, dancers, and rising celebrities, the Kessler twins stood out. They had a visual symmetry that made them instantly memorable, but they also projected warmth, charm, and professionalism that directors, producers, and fellow performers admired deeply. Paris gave them visibility. Italy, however, made them immortal. The early 1960s in Italy were defined by an explosion of creativity. Film studios were booming, music was evolving, and television still young and full of promise needed stars who could capture the nation's imagination. Italy was a country hungry for glamour, variety shows, and symbols of modernity. When Alice and Ellen Kessler first stepped into Italian television studios, specifically the glittering set of Giardino d'Inferno, audiences immediately understood that something special had arrived. With their perfect synchronicity, their elegant Teutonic presence, and their unmistakable charm, they became sensations almost overnight. Italians were captivated not just by their looks, but by their energy, bright, wholesome, confident, and slightly mysterious in that European way that defined so much of the 1960s pop culture aesthetic. Their journey from Paris to Rome led them to work with iconic figures like Don Lurio and the Quartetto and their rise was cemented when they joined Mina on Studio Uno in 1961. The Italian public fell in love instantly. Their performances were clean yet sensual, playful yet polished. Their voices blended perfectly. Their dancing seemed effortless. They became the kind of celebrities who didn't just appear on shows, they defined them. Their performances became cultural events, moments families talked about at dinner tables, moments rewatched on early television reruns, moments that never fully faded from the collective memory. One of their biggest legacies is a simple tune, "Da on Pa." It is almost impossible to speak about the Kesslers in Italy without mentioning it. The song, with its catchy rhythm and playful choreography, became a national phenomenon. It was one of those rare pieces of music that slipped into the cultural bloodstream, remaining alive decade after decade. Even the youngest generations who discovered it through YouTube, TikTok, or grandparents humming along feel a nostalgic spark when they hear it. It wasn't just a song. It was a symbol of an era when television variety shows were events that united entire families and when entertainment had a kind of innocence, joy, and class that modern formats rarely recreate. Although Europe was their home base, the Kessler twins didn't stop there. They soon crossed the Atlantic and made their American television debut on CBS's The Red Skelton Hour. American audiences, already familiar with showgirls and dancers, were nonetheless instantly charmed by the twins. In a country that adored novelty acts, variety shows, and glamorous performers, the Kesslers were a perfect fit. They went on to appear on national programs such as The Ed Sullivan Show, one of the most influential television stages in U.S. history. For many European performers, breaking into the American market was a dream many pursued but few achieved. The Kesslers did it effortlessly, bringing their European elegance and charm to millions of American living rooms. Their global recognition grew even further when they appeared in the 1963 film Sodom and Gomorrah as dancers. Although their roles were not leading ones, their presence was unmistakable, and their contribution to the film added a distinct visual elegance to its grand, theatrical scenes. That same year, they reached a level of pop culture stardom few performers ever attain. They were featured on the cover of Life magazine, one of the most influential and widely read publications in the United States. Life magazine covers were not given lightly. They were reserved for cultural icons, world leaders, and figures who captured the public's imagination. For the Kesslers, appearing on that cover was both an honor and a confirmation that they were no longer just European stars, they were global ones. The Kessler twins were more than dancers. They became actresses in Italian cinema, starring in films like Dinah Risi's Il Gioved and Alberto Sordi's I Complessi. They brought their elegance and sense of timing to these roles, often playing characters who reflected elements of their public persona, stylish, modern, and cosmopolitan. Their film roles expanded their reach and showed audiences that they were versatile performers capable of holding their own alongside some of the biggest names in Italian entertainment. They later appeared on stage with Guarini and Giovanni, two legends of Italian theater, further enhancing their artistic credibility.